Hello and welcome back to Mama Juice. I am your host Sandra, and today I am going to be chatting with another twin mom, and I'm just going to pick her brain on everything twin mom. So let's do it. Yeah. Hold up. Did your babies go down for a nap today?
No. So they actually literally woke up at 12 and I woke them up.
Like for the day?
Yeah, and my sister was just telling me that too. She was like, "What time did they go to sleep?" I was like, "I think like maybe 9 or 10. I don't remember."
Oh my goodness.
Ah, yeah,
How does that even happen?
I don't know. They've always been really late sleepers, and
oh my gosh.
My boyfriend's always like, "Well, they're like their mama," because I like to sleep in. So
yeah, my kids are not like me. Like my twins are very early risers. Like sometimes they get me up at like 4 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I never, like, that's the one thing I was like worried about when becoming a mother, because I have other mom friends who are like, "Oh, you're not going to be able to sleep in anymore. It's going to be long nights." And yeah, at first it really was long nights, because feeding all the time. But once they were on a routine sleeping schedule, it was like they just slept forever. Like so long so that I had to go check in and make sure, are they still breathing?
That is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, my twins turned 3 yesterday, and they didn't sleep like all night. It was so bad.
Yeah. They've just always slept. So it's funny because whenever I need to go do something, like for example, right now, or I need to get them up for a doctor's appointment, they always sleep in. But whenever I want them to sleep in, they're up at like 8:39. So
yeah, no, my kids do that kind of stuff too. I mean, they like never actually what I consider sleep in, but they always get up the most early on weekends. Like their earliest days are always weekend days.
yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But do you recall how far along you were when you found out you were pregnant with twins?
Yes. So I actually found out, well, with twins, it was actually 2 months, so like 9 weeks.
Okay.
The funny thing is, well, it's not funny, but now looking back, it is funny. I found out I was pregnant when I was maybe like 3 or 4 weeks, which is obviously really early.
Yeah.
And it was unexpected. So I told and I was at the time, I was living in Tucson and my boyfriend was living in Mesa. So, it was a long distance relationship. Yeah. And he would come visit me on the weekends and one day during the week. And it was that one day during the week, I was like, I just feel like I really need to take a pregnancy test. Normally my periods are not normal, so I wasn't super freaking out. I just had some kind of feeling that I needed to take a test. So we took a test, and I was in the bathroom and he was in my room getting his clothes ready because he was going to shower to go to work. And, you usually have to set a timer and, wait for it to actually fill up, the little lines and with your pee. And I set it down and I looked over and immediately it was like 2 lines. I was like, oh my gosh, no, this is not real. I like put it back in the wrapper, threw it away. And then my boyfriend comes in. He's like, so where's the test? I was like, nope, it was faulty. I need to go take another one.
That one was broken.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way. I was like, I've taken pregnancy tests before,
Yeah.
I've always had to wait. So I was like, there's no way. There's no way. So I was like, I need to go to a clinic. Like, I need to get real results like right now because I need to know what I'm going to do. And at the time I didn't have insurance because I had just switched over to part-time at my job. So obviously insurance goes away with that.
Right.
And like, I'm living like paycheck to paycheck over here trying to pay my car. I was like, I need to look up some clinics. So thankfully, free clinic, not even a mile away from me. Okay. We scheduled an appointment for the next day. and they did an ultrasound, and they did it through the tummy first. And so of course they couldn't find anything through the belly. They're like, okay, we're gonna go in vaginal. And they went in and they didn't see anything. They're like, okay, well we can't dismiss. It might be an ectopic pregnancy.
Oh.
Or it's not viable and you're probably gonna miscarry. So they're like, come back in 2 weeks and
Oh my gosh.
we'll do another ultrasound. So obviously in that time, it's like anxiety overload over here because you're like, am I pregnant? Am I not? And I was like, I don't want to tell anybody because I don't want to tell anybody and then be like, oh, I'm having a miscarriage,
Right.
They did it again internally, so vaginally. And yeah, there was a fetus, but there was only one heartbeat. I heard a heartbeat, there was one. You're like, okay, yeah, you're pregnant. It's a viable pregnancy. You're just too early on to detect it. And they're like, okay, come back in like a month for another checkup. He did come to this one, my boyfriend, because it was scheduled. And all of a sudden, the nurse or the technician, she was like, and then she called in another nurse, and then three total nurses came in, and they're like, so the doctor isn't here right now, and we can't technically call it, because they're nurses.
Oh.
And they weren't sure also. And they're like, but you're seeing what I'm seeing, and there's two pulsating heartbeats.
You're like, what? Okay, so a lot of people don't know. I didn't know this before I got pregnant with twins, that
Right.
there are several types of twins, and it's based on when they split or if it was two eggs that were fertilized at the same time. So what type of twins are your girls?
They were monodi.
Okay, that's what my boys are.
Yeah, so same sac, but divided by a membrane.
Yes, and they share a placenta.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, cool. And did they determine that right away and send you to a specialist?
No, so at first, because again, I was 9 weeks when they told me I was pregnant with twins. The membrane that was dividing them seemed really thick.
Oh.
Really thick. So they didn't send me to a specialist, but they're like, okay, you need to go see an OB because I was just going to the clinic.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I was just at the clinic with nurses, and at those kinds of clinics, they don't always have doctors. They have doctors on special circumstances, It's just like volunteer nurses. That's why they said they couldn't technically call it.
Okay.
And that's why they're like, you need to go to an OB. So they sent me to the OB that volunteers at their clinic. And she was like, the membrane's so thick. They look like they're in bunk beds. And they look like they're fraternal. I'm like, oh, cool. So I thought, obviously, if they're fraternal twins, the first thought was like, oh, boy, girl, I want them to be boy, girl,
Yeah.
Done with one.
Right. One and done, yeah.
Okay, so she's like, yeah, it looks like they're fraternal. Come back in 2 weeks. Because they really check you to make sure it's not like the twin-to-twin transfusion that might go on. So I go 2 weeks, she's like, actually, it's thinned out now, and it's actually their monodi twins. So you're going to have to see me every week.
Yeah.
Every week because they need to make sure that the fluids are unbalanced and one twin is getting more than the other. I literally switched 3 times here in Mesa to 3 different types of OBs. And finally, the last OB that I had referred me to where they specialize in high-risk pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
There got to a point when I was 16 weeks where they were actually concerned about twin-to-twin transfusion.
Oh.
And I was going there twice a week because they really wanted to check the fluids because one twin was gaining more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
He was growing at a faster rate than the other twin, than twin B. Twin A is usually always a dominant one.
Yeah.
So they were even talking about specialists that they'd have to do surgery, and they're like, there's no specialist here in Arizona. The closest one is Texas.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they're like, there's no specialist here in Arizona. You're gonna have to fly out to Texas. But that's worst case scenario. It's it had barely exceeded 2% of the growth, like difference. And they wanted it to be under 15, but it had exceeded to a 17% difference. So they had me on all these pills, and finally at 22 weeks, they're like, okay, they're down to 15.5% difference. We're just gonna monitor you, but the risk has gone away. But yeah,
Oh,
it was
so
scary.
what is, I didn't know that they could give you like an oral treatment for twin to twin. So what does that do?
Well, they weren't really. It wasn't really like a prescribed medication. It was 1,500 milligrams of calcium a day, like on top of what's already in my prenatal. I had it on 700 milligrams of iron, and then I had it on 500 milligrams of zinc. It was like crazy. All of these like, exceeded amounts of vitamins that were going to like, help the brain develop faster. But yeah, it was harsh.
That's so interesting because I remember going to that same office.
Mm-hmm.
Everything happened really quick for me. So it was like I found out I was having twins. I was referred to a specialist. Mm-hmm. And so I went there right away. And I remember the doctor sat us down and talked to us about all the possible complications. And that was so scary. That was like the scariest thing ever. I got very lucky and I didn't experience any of it. Like my boys grew at the same rate. They had like almost the same exact fluid the entire time. And it was like perfect. But I remember that was like the scariest part, was hearing about all the complications. And their membrane was very thin. So there was a point where they thought they might be mono, which is, I mean, it's one of the more dangerous
pregnancy that you can have.
Besides a conjoined, right? Yeah. So I had to wait it out and see what they were, and it turned out, thankfully, to be mono di, and I lucked out with that. And a lot of people don't realize, I didn't realize how often when you're pregnant with twins, you have to see the doctor, because you follow up, what was it, every month with your OB, and then I was following up every other week for ultrasounds with the specialist. And then once you get closer, because even with a singleton baby, once it gets closer, you go every other week to your OB, I believe. I don't know, it's been 5 years since I had one baby.
Too far gone.
Yeah, and so everything with twins is doubled, right? So even doctor's visits, it's like 2 times as much when you're pregnant.
Yeah, for sure. Even now, they're only a year and a half. It's still like I have to think about that time,
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, my boys turned 3 yesterday, and there are still times where I look at them and I'm like, I have twins. Like, you guys are twins.
Exactly. I'm always like in bed thinking about all the things, and then I tell my boyfriend, I was like, can you believe we have twins and 2 of them? Like, so I get it. I can't believe it either.
Isn't that so strange? Like, such a strange feeling. But are you gonna are they your only babies, or you want more?
So there's a conversation we actually had recently with me and my boyfriend. So I was like, if I do have another baby, I want the baby to be close in age. That way I don't feel like I'm starting over,
Yeah.
Because if they're like, because before I was even pregnant, I was like, okay, I'm going to wait like 5 years. That way, I can work and like, get into shape and, and then I'll do it again. And that way the 5-year-old can help me, with the baby. Like she or he can carry the baby, give them bottles, all this. But then once I had the babies, I was like, wait, I don't want to do this again. Like if I'm done in 5 years, I'm not going to want to go back,
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's how I feel too. But at the same time, I felt like 2 years was kind of like, my daughter turned 2. She turned 5 on the 28th. So her birthday's 11 days after the boys. And so she turned 2 just 2 weeks after they were born. So at one point I had newborns and a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
And so 2 years, I don't know if it's just because I had twins or
Right.
in general, I feel like 2 years is hard because they're, I mean, at two, they're still so vulnerable and they're still so dependent on you. So I
Mhm.
feel like three and above is
It's-
more ideal as far as everybody's coping with the changes.
Yes. Yeah. So I sometimes tell him, I was like, I don't know how I can love any more babies, as much as I love them. They have my heart. And he's like, one more. I was like, I don't know. Also, my patience runs thin as well when they're not,
Right.
doing what I need them to be doing.
But you know
So,
what? That's a common fear of mothers
yeah.
is that you're not going to be able to love or build the same bond with your second
Right.
child or children. And I felt that. I remember I'm like, no, she's my everything. Like she is literally my little best friend and
Mhm.
I don't know how I'm going to love these two in comparison to her. But I
Right.
do.
I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. I don't know how. Like, what if my second, well, it would be my third, but my third child is like a crazy person. They always
Right?
say like your second child or children, depend. In your case, you had two. Your second pregnancy, there you go. That they're always like way different from your first ones, and your expectations are for them to be like your first ones, and then they're not.
So, with that being said, are your girls, I don't want to say good babies because that sounds bad, but like that's where that comes from because a lot of people have a first child that's like a breeze, really well
Right.
behaved, didn't cry a lot, sleeps really good, and then
Yeah.
like, oh, I can do this again. And then their second child is like never sleeps, throws tantrums all the time, just like not a happy baby. And so, how are your girls' temperament?
You know what? So they are such good babies. Like they're really good babies when I take care of them. But as soon as their dad comes home, I don't know if it's because they don't really see him because he works, Monday through Friday, really like obviously way before they get up. So when they're awake, they only see me. They never see him. And then he comes home like 5:36.
Oh, wow.
They go to sleep, shortly, like 2.5 hours after he comes home. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
that time we're like giving them dinner, so we're not really like he's not really playing with them. It's
Yeah.
me, feeding them, making sure they're eating their food. Um, so as soon as he comes home, they like get needy and only want him. Like they cry if like
Oh,
he sets them down to go do something and they're just
yeah.
crying and I'm like, oh my gosh, they never, and then they cry if their food isn't ready right when we sit them down in their high chairs. Like for me, I'll sit them down there, give them a little cracker, and then continue making their breakfast because now that they're mobile, every time I do breakfast, they try to do the knobs on the stove. And so
Oh,
yeah, they can't, or I'll bump into them, like I'll turn
yeah.
around trying to do something and I'll knock them over. So they go into high chairs as soon as I start making them breakfast. But with him, when we try to put them in the high chairs, they're like crying. And yeah, they're just really needy with him. So, so just for that, like 2 hours, it's not bad for me because he's here to help me.
Right.
He's there to control the situation and I can go do whatever I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, yes, I think they are really calm.
Oh, good. So,
Yeah.
what is the most common question you get from like people in public or anybody who finds out that you have twins?
Oh my gosh, you already probably know. Are they twins? I'm like, well, one, yes, they're like they're dressed the same and they're the same height, and they're like, oh, are they identical? I'm like, yes. And then they're like, oh, did twins run in your family? I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, one, identical twins are not genetic. Like it's
Yes.
my luck. So even if they were, this did not happen because they run in my family,
Right. I always tell them that I'm like, this could happen to you.
Yeah, so those are the three top questions. Oh, and how old are they? And then I always now I'm like, oh, they're one. And they're like, one. I'm like, they're like almost gonna be 1.5. Like they want months. And I'm like, I'm not good at counting. Like, I barely, they're barely going to go to the 15-month appointment and they're 17 months. So I don't keep track of months.
I did up until only 18 months, and that is because of the schedule at the doctor. So I did count them in months, all my kids, because approaching doctor's appointments. But after 18 months, I wasn't like 19, 20, 21. No. At that point, they're 1.5.
I decided, obviously, before they turned a year, then yes, I'd be like, oh, they're 10 months, 8 months, I decided that once they turn a year, I will be there. One, if they're between 1 and 1.5, or if they're after 1.5, if 1.5, or then just 2.
Yeah.
That's too much work for me to count.
See, and the are they twins question doesn't really bother me, because I have a cousin who has 2 boys close in, well, they have 3 close in age, but the first 2 looked so much alike, and the younger one was taller. So at one point they were the same height. They looked like twins.
Yeah.
And for holidays and stuff, they used to dress them the same, because a lot of people dress siblings the same as for special occasions. They legit look like twins. So I'm like, okay, I get it. Sometimes siblings look a lot alike.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I guess now you bring up that point. Me and I'm the oldest, but me and my younger sister, the one in the middle, we are only 10 months and a half apart.
Yeah.
Not even a year. Like, my mom thought, oh, if I'm breastfeeding, I'm not going to get pregnant, and she got pregnant.
Yeah.
Those old wives' tales that people tell you, oh,
right.
Yeah, there's no way this can happen.
Fun fact, did you know that getting pregnant while breastfeeding, which I did, increases your risk of having twins?
Oh, I didn't. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, ladies.
Example of that. But my mom would always, our birthdays are in the summer, and both of my parents always work. So they would send us to my grandparents in Mexico, and in the summer, me and her are the same age. So they're like, oh, how old are you? And I'll be like 10. And like, oh, how old are you? She's like 10. I'm like, oh, are you guys twins? They're like, no. And they wouldn't understand the fact that we were not twins, but we were still the same age and sisters. And we did other than the fact that I'm more of a darker complexion, we look the same because we were the same height as well until I grew.
Right. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, it's just annoying, I guess, especially now, with COVID and everything. I'm trying to go in and out. Like, I'm not trying to spend my time here and have a conversation with you.
Yes, absolutely. I also have a friend who has Irish twins, like you and your sister. And the way that their birthdays fell, her daughter's older, so her daughter started kindergarten late because of where her birthday was. So her and her brother started kindergarten together, and they look very similar. So people think they're fraternal twins. Right. Because, they go to kindergarten, they're in the same grade.
Yeah.
So it's interesting what people ask you and what they assume. What are your girls' names?
Rio and Nova.
Okay, so you didn't do matchy either.
No, I thought that's crazy because one, I already confused them. Like, I'm calling Nova Rio or Rio Nova, and not because I can't tell them apart, but just that's how it comes out. And I feel like all mothers do the same because my mom calls me by my sister's name and my name is the last thing about.
Yeah, all the time.
Imagine having them I don't know. I can't even think of 2 names that sound the same. But
Mia and Maya.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
I didn't do matchy either. We just picked names that we liked.
What are your boys?
Luke and Dominic.
Oh, I love Luke.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we just were like, hey, we like those names. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot of people with twins, they have to find coordinating names.
Yes, or the same letter or something. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I guess I did do purposely is give them, so I already knew before we even got pregnant, I always told my boyfriend that we were going to name our first child Rio, just because his middle name is Rio and I really like it. So my boy or girl, I don't care. Our first child is going to be named Rio. So obviously Rio is baby A.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing I didn't want to do is like give the second baby, so Nova, a really long name since Rio is only 3 letters.
Yeah.
The thing that we did look for, like a short name that we liked. So which was hard. It was hard to come up with another short name that we liked. But yeah, so that's the only thing we did do. Short names for both.
And then what about clothes? Do you like dressing them alike?
Oh, for sure. I do. I like dressing them the same because I know at one point when they're like, I don't know, 5 or above, they're gonna have their own opinion. Yeah. And I'm not gonna be able to say, no, I want you to wear this. So I'm gonna enjoy it as much as I can.
Girl, it's definitely not 5 because my twins, they already have opinions. They have very strong opinions. Okay.
You're like, you're in for it.
Yeah. Well, they don't care if they're the same or different, but like there's just like a day where like one of them's like, I have to wear the shirt with the ball on it.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, but I actually got a lot of their clothes. I still do. I get a lot of their clothes secondhand or hand me down. So I don't have a lot of matching, but it was never really my goal to match them. Just because I want them to have like their own identity from the beginning. But what I do like to do is coordinate them so they match, but they don't. So like,
I get it. Colors
for their birthday. One of them was wearing a blue checkered button up because blue is his color, and the other one was wearing a yellow checkered button up because yellow is his color. So I do that.
Okay. Yeah.
But when I do dress them alike, I really like it a lot.
Yes, I do. I do love dressing them alike, and
it's cute.
Minus the times, like it's funny because my mom knows this. Whenever because she lives really close, like it's like not even 10 minutes walking from my house. So I see her the most, and I'll show up with the girls, and they're like, "Oh, did one of them poop or pee?" I'm like, "Yeah, you already know that's the only reason that they're." Or she got really dirty, you know, where I have to change her out of her clothes. So that's all the time that they don't match. When
I've always wondered, is it stressful, like when you're doing laundry and stuff, to like keep all their matching clothes? Like half the time I'm just pulling out whatever I can just to get them dressed. So I'm like, how do these twin moms coordinate all this? And then I have a friend who has identical twin girls. They're like 4, I believe. And I mean, down to their hair tie, down to their socks, they match. And I'm like, my kids hardly even have matching socks on each, like themselves, like pairs, because I can't find them. So I'm like, how do you do that?
Well, you know, that's a good question for my boyfriend.
Oh, does he do that?
Yes, because so this is an agreement that I hate doing laundry like that. I hate it. I was like, I will clean everything else, but you have to do laundry. Like I just can't do laundry. I hate doing laundry. So he does the laundry, but when I do help him fold it once in a while, when he pulls it out and we're like sitting on the couch, I will help him. And when I help him and we fold it, we fold them and then match them, put them together, like pile them together. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. So and then we put it away. But honestly, it just stays in the clothes basket. It doesn't get put away.
Right? No.
It just stays there. And it's been like that since they grew out of their like 0 to 6 month clothes. That's what's in their drawers, and I need to clean that out. So, and I haven't done that.
I know it so much. Like, I think people realize, obviously, with twins, it's 2 of everything, but you don't realize what that means.
Right.
So, like, for example, when somebody hands me down like 10 pairs of socks, like for my daughter, it was like, cool, like 10 pairs of socks, that's all she needs, right? For them, that's not even a full 7-day week. Exactly. So when you look at it like that, it's like, that's a lot.
It is a lot, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
expensive.
that's why I get everything secondhand because I'm like, there's no way I'm buying two of everything.
See, because obviously, I like to match them, so it's hard for me to do that.
Yeah.
But what I do is all the clothes that they get is on sale or out of season for the next year. That's like the only way I can afford to, get them the same thing that is, I guess, new. Or unless if like grandparents buy them, then that's not my money.
Well, and they have twin resales, so where twin moms do like online sales of all their twins' clothes. Have you ever seen that?
I did hear about that, and I heard about that about like twin mom groups on like Facebook. I don't have a Facebook, and I was going to join through my boyfriend's account because he has a Facebook. But then I saw that only moms are allowed, so then they'll think that he's not a mom.
Right.
So I thought about making or not an Instagram, Facebook just solely for that reason. I haven't done it, which maybe I will because I will maybe sell some of their clothes.
Yeah.
It's just hard though because I want to keep everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I am very emotional and sentimental. So much.
I get it. I know some people are like that. I don't know why I wasn't. Maybe it's because a lot of my clothes was secondhand. But as soon as my kids grow out of it, I'm like, do you want this? Anybody want it? Anybody want it? I like take it out of my house.
Right. Yeah. And then another thing, my mom was like, well, she's like, what if, because I have sold some clothes, and she's like, well, what if you have twins again? I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have twins again? Well, one, that would be kind of wild and cool at the same time because then I'd have 4 kids with only 2 pregnancies, But I highly doubt that it will happen again.
It's actually more common than you think.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in a lot of twin mom Facebook groups, and a lot of families have more than one set of twins.
Wow. And this is what like just by luck.
Right.
What?
I mean, I secretly really want a second set of twins, but I'm done having kids, so it's never gonna happen. But I would love that.
I know, that's what I tell my boyfriend. I was like, that's the only way we're ever gonna have 4 kids total is if I get pregnant with twins again,
Yeah.
Because, 3 is it's a odd number. We need an even number. We need an even number.
Yeah. But you know what? I have 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to think that too. Like I used to, even just in life, I didn't like odd numbers for some reason. Like I always wanted even numbers of everything. Right. And I have 3. And it's a cool dynamic, but my fear was always, because I had my singleton and then my twins.
Right.
And so my fear was always the boys are going to have this crazy good bond and she's just going to be left out all the time. Yeah. But it has been very, very just special to watch how each of them have their unique bonds.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where her and one of the twins tend to leave the other twin out.
Oh.
I know, I thought it would be the opposite,
Leaving her out, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sweet. I'm glad because that's also what I think about if I have one child,
Yes.
One child will be left out.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, they are siblings and they all find their way to have a relationship with each other. But so do you believe in, I've had a lot of people who aren't twin moms who don't seem to really understand the twin bond. Right. They're like, oh, it's just a sibling thing. Like all siblings are like that. But even with my daughter being able to bond so much to her brothers, I still see this really unique dynamic that I feel is only present in identical twins specifically, because ultimately fraternal twins are siblings who were born together, whereas identical twins are actually split in half from DNA. So have you seen in the 1.5 years that you've been a twin mom, have you seen that twin bond?
Oh, yes. Yes. Like, for example, they will feed each other. Like, so Nova, the younger one, she doesn't eat as much, but she knows that her sister eats so much. And once she's done with her food, she'll feed her sister like to her mouth, like,
Yeah.
since August. So I don't know how many months they were, but since August, they have not had binkies in the day. So they only get binkies for nap time or when they go to sleep or in car rides. So sometimes they will somehow find the binkies that are set away after they wake up, and they'll put the binky in their mouth, and then after like a few minutes, she'll take it out and put it in her mouth, and then they'll share that binky because they know they only have one, and they like the binky, and so they'll share.
Aww.
And
Yeah, no, it's super cute. My boys do that with like suckers and popsicles. Like they like swap, and I'm like, why are you doing that? Like,
right. Yeah.
but have they ever been separated? Because you're a stay-at-home mom, so have they ever not been together at any point?
I think once, but they were really young. Like they weren't even walking or mobile at all. My sister, one of the babies was sleeping, and the other one was awake. This was when they were not on a super same schedule sleeping wise. And she went to the store, and I think she took one of my girls to the store, one of them, and then the other one was still here sleeping. So that was the only occasion I think that I can think of. But no, they haven't. Other than that, they have never been separated.
Yeah, and my boys too. They're very, very rarely apart because obviously at daycare they're in the same class.
Yes.
When they are, like, if one has a doctor's appointment, I'll leave the other one at daycare and I'll take just the one.
Yes.
I mean, they tell me that one has a really hard time. The one that's with me doesn't because they're like, oh, I'm with mom by myself, and they feel all special. But the one that's at daycare is like, where's my brother? Or we went to the park the other day for the first time in a long time because I was able to just let them run now that they're old enough. And it was like they kept checking in with each other, like every once in a while it was like, where's Luke? Where's Luke? And then he'd have to find him, and then he's okay. Right. And that's not something that I feel other siblings really do. They don't have to have tabs on their siblings at all times. But if they didn't know where the other one was, it was like a state of emergency.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like they will always be in the same room together. Like one will wander off in the playroom, and then the other one is like sitting on the floor doing her own thing, and then she looks up and realizes her sister's not there, and then she goes and walks over to the playroom. But it's funny because they'll like start the gibberish. It's like she's calling out for her, and then you hear the other twin in the room yelling back at her.
Oh yeah, even now that the boys, I feel like they're behind in speech, but every evaluation they've ever had says they're not. But even now that they do speak a lot better, they still communicate with each other in a way that none of us
can. Yeah. I know, they're funny. It's funny to watch them interact and talk to each other in a way that they only can understand each other.
Right. Did you have them by C-section or vaginally?
I had them C-section because I
planned.
Well, no, because I got preeclampsia.
Oh, okay.
So I actually stayed in the hospital. Like they were discharged before I was even discharged.
Oh, wow.
They were both head down and ready. I mean, obviously the plan was that I was going to be induced because,
right.
I don't know if you had to be induced or if you went to natural labor, but they said that if they exceed, normal one babies, they grow the most at the end of the pregnancy. So like if they exceed 37 weeks, then they could again go in the risk of twin-to-twin transfusion.
Or the placenta could fail.
Yeah, so they were going to induce me. So I had an ultrasound. I went to the hospital, and one of the Nova flipped over, and then sudden they're like, okay, talking to me about a C-section, and they're like, we could, try vaginally and then flip the baby, or she naturally flips down on her own once her sister gives her room. Or, if she runs into risk, we have to maybe do vaginally and cesarean. So I was like, that would be the worst ever. Like, I would not want to have those two types of experiences. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do cesarean. And then all of a sudden I went into preeclampsia and it was like crazy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was in recovery for like 5 hours. And
God.
it was crazy. I know.
Yeah. No, yeah, I did get induced.
Yes.
I got induced at 36 weeks and 3 days, I think it was.
And you had them vaginally?
I did, yeah.
Oh.
They were both head down. I think there was 1 week where Dominic, baby B, was breech, and then he went back to head down. And when you deliver vaginally, you still deliver in an operating room.
Yes.
And so they came and they were looking at Dominic after Luke was born, and it was crazy because we all, like, as soon as the tech put the ultrasound on my belly, we all watched him just like right into the birthing canal. Like, he was like, oh, it's my turn, here I come.
That's what they said. There was like, that's what usually happens.
Yeah.
That once they are given room, they will flip over on their own, but then there's also that chance that it might not happen.
Yeah.
And I didn't want, and they're like, and we will try to flip it, when they move your stomach and all that stuff, but sometimes it doesn't always work, and you have to go into an emergency C-section. So I don't know, I was just scared. I wasn't, and you've had one child before, so you've experienced birth. I've never have, so I was like, I'm not gonna risk it. Let's go. And then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, you actually do have to go because you might, go into all these.
No, it is. It's a hard decision. I mean, I was pretty dead set on having a vaginal delivery. I don't know what it was. There was like just something inside of me that was like, you're going to do this. Like, you're going to be able to do this.
Right.
And I was never scared that it was going to be a vaginal than a C-section. Like, I just didn't have that. And I really believe a lot in like following like your intuition, Yeah. And so obviously you needed a C-section at the end of the day. And I just had this feeling like I can make this work. And my daughter was actually 9 pounds, 4 ounces, 22 inches long. Yeah. And so my OB said she prepped your body to have twins. Like, she prepared you. And so I think that also helped a lot.
Yes, for sure. Once your body knows that you basically give birth, it's like, okay, I'm ready to do this again. I know what to do. So pregnancy, that's why they say your second pregnancy always comes faster. Like, they come sooner than the first one because your body already knows what to do.
Yeah. One thing I've always wondered, and there's no way to know because none of us can experience both, but I've always wondered if it's, and I hate to make it a competition, like, is it easier for you or for me? But I've always wondered if it would have been easier for me to have my twins first and then another child, or if it's easier to have the singleton and then introduce the twins into that scenario. What's your opinion on that?
I think, head on, like, I struggled up until like 6 months with them, like struggled just because they're so fragile, I struggled. Like, there was times I would cry because they would be crying and I didn't know who to tend to first. But after 6 months, they were more sturdy and I was able to like handle them better. So I think that experience, it would be so much easier now to have one baby, and also sleep-wise too, because it was so hard to get them on the same sleep schedule. Like, for the longest time, one would be sleeping and the other one was awake.
Yeah.
And then once the other one woke up, I would go put the other one down. So I never had a break for like almost 8 months. I didn't have a break ever. And then finally we got into a routine of like, okay, they're going to sleep on the same time, whether or not they like it, because this is how it's going to be, or else I won't be able to be sane enough to have patience.
Right. No, I get that. I totally get that. My daughter stopped sleeping or taking naps. I don't know. She was probably a little over 1,
Oh no.
and she was still waking up at night. So when the boys came, she was still waking up at night to breastfeed. And
Oh,
I remember one night their dad goes, I think I was dreaming this. Were you running around the house last night? And I'm like, yeah, I was. Because it was like I would settle somebody and the next one would wake up. I'd settle that somebody and the next one would wake up. And I was literally running around the house trying to get everyone to stay asleep.
oh my gosh. See, that was me for a whole 8 months.
Yeah.
It was not a good time.
No, no. I always say like that first year of twin mom life, it's like pure survival mode. And it's like you just don't even want to remember it.
Right?
We have like PTSD.
Yes, you're like, I don't know what happened. It was a blur.
Right? Yeah. People are like, well, how did you do it? Like, it's like you just do it because you have to.
Right, yeah. Now
Like,
it's a
that's
lot.
the answer. What's that?
Now it's way more better. It's like
Yes.
now I can like get them out of the crib and they can go do their own thing. I don't have to make sure, that they're settled in a place.
Hmm. And
They're more,
that's the beauty of twins is they always have a playmate.
yes. So they'll always entertain each other.
Yeah. So like now, like with the boys, I could when they're in the bath, I clean the bathroom. So it's like I'm in there with them. They're safe. They're playing, but I can do something. Whereas with
Right.
Jackson, I always felt like I had to be there playing with her and interacting with her when she was in the bath because it was just her. So
Right.
I think that's a lot nicer when it comes to twins because it's like you always have a buddy.
Do you think it was easier to have one baby and then twins? Or
I always thought it would be easier to do twins and then one baby
yes.
because, like you said, once you have twins, adding another baby, you're like, one? Like, that's a breeze. Okay, I got this.
That's how I feel. That's why I tell my boyfriend, I was like, oh, if we have a next child, it's gonna be so easy.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also that aspect where they always have somebody to play with. Whereas when I had the boys, Jasmine, she had just turned 2. I'm still having to try to entertain a 2-year-old, take care of a 2-year-old, change her pull-ups, work on potty training while taking care of newborn twins.
Yeah.
So I personally always felt like if I did it, I mean, I couldn't choose, but if it were flipped, it would have been just a little bit easier.
Oh I still think that like if we have another kid, other than their temperament being through the roof, I think care of them is gonna be way easier than having to take care of 2 babies.
Yeah. So, last question. What is like the biggest tip you would give to a new twin mom or somebody who just found out that they're going to be a twin mom? Like, what do you think is the most vital information for them to have?
Um, that that things are going to happen that are going to be out of your control. Like, for example, crying. They're always going to cry. And do not feel bad to the point where you break down yourself. That happened to me way too many times where one would start crying and then I was handling the one baby. And then before I could settle that one baby down, I would just put her down and then she would start crying. So take your time with the baby that you have. And then once she's settled, then go get the other baby or else everyone's going to be crying, including yourself.
Oh, yeah, totally. So many times. One time, so my mom lives close by too. We rent the house across the street from her.
Right.
And so she comes over all the time and she always has. And I remember one time the boys, I mean, they were sitting up, so they were probably like 6 months old. They're sitting in my lap. And I don't remember what was happening, but she walks in. I'm bawling my eyes out. The boys are crying hysterically. My daughter's crying hysterically. And she walks in, she goes, "What the hell is going on here?"
Yes, I know. My mom would call me too, and I'm like, what? And I'm like crying, and I can't even catch my breath. I'm like,
It's so hard.
she hears obviously all the babies crying in the background. I'm like, I can't do this. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough to like maintain your cool. There was like a few occasions when I just call my boyfriend, I'm like, you just need to come home. I was like, there's no way I was going to handle this on my own.
Right. Yeah, it's a
So
challenge, but
I,
we all get through it.
yeah, all in all is just like try to keep your cool and, handle one thing at a time, because you need practice to handle two things at a time.
Yeah.
It's not going to come easy, but it will come. It will come for sure.
Yeah. And it's not even two things at a time because it's like the babies, the feedings, the diapers. So you're really handling like several things.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's wild. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yes, it is. But it's a fun one. And I would do it again.
I would not give it up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Oh, of course. You too. I need to ask you more questions about your vaginal birth because I think that's so awesome. That's so
Oh,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah, I have a blog post I can send you.
Oh, yes. And also your breastfeeding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like right now I'm down to one feeding. So, and I get sad thinking about the day that, they're just not going to care for it and they're just going to be done, you
You
know?
know what? Some kids don't ever get there because I had to wean my daughter when she was 2.5 because feeding all three of them was killing me.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I weaned her, and it was rough. The boys are still nursing at night, and they still sometimes ask for it during the day, and I go, it's not bedtime, not till bedtime.
We are also down to one feeding then.
I nursed them to sleep,
Okay.
and then like last night they were up all night nursing, like literally like they were newborns.
Yeah.
And then at nap time.
At nighttime. Okay. So to go to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, to go to sleep or stay asleep. It's definitely around sleep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely have to have a conversation about that too.
Yeah,
Because
I feel like we should do an entire video on breastfeeding twins.
oh, for sure, that would be an interesting one.
Yeah, because it's a challenge, but it's
It is.
doable.
Alrighty. I'll let you get back to work.
All right, have a good day.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye. Much for watching, and if you have any questions, go ahead and drop those down below. Go ahead and subscribe so you can get alerts, and thank you guys. Bye.